Hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Lua's data type number. Welcome back everybody, thanks for joining us. So, Lua's data type number. What is it? What can you do with it? So for those of you in the know, Lua is a double precision floating type number that complies with the C implementation of the IEEE 754 standard. So for those of you who are not programmers and who aren't familiar with that, don't worry with the jargon because we're going to totally explain everything that means. So in every version of Lua, a number is represented by a floating point. That's with the exception of Lua 5.3 and 5.4, which also represents integer types as well. So, what are float and integer types? So a floating point number is exactly that. It's a number that has a floating point, or a decimal place that moves from left to right to represent a fractional number. So we now know that, but what's an integer? Well, an integer is a number that doesn't have a floating point. It's a round, flat number. Now, how do we know what type of number we're dealing with? So we've got a number in some variable in our LuaScript. How do we know what it is? Well, the truth actually is, well, probably you don't care. Lua handles that all under the hood. So if it is an integer number or a floating point number, it will just handle it appropriately. But sometimes there is the need to figure out whether you're dealing with something that has a decimal place on it. For instance, you may want to do some arithmetic expression upon it, which means that you need to be concerned as to whether it's a floating point number. Maybe there's floating point rounding error that you need to be worried about. More on that subject in a new video to come soon. So the math library, the standard C math library, will provide some assistance in this case, and it actually has a function called type. So if we use math.type and pass in the variable that we're interested in, that will actually tell us a string of whether it is an integer or a float. Now, that all aside, how do we define our number literals? How do we actually put numbers into our scripts? So most of the time we'll have some input from the user or for a file or some other external system. But we can also define literals in our scripts. So therefore we're literally typing in our numbers into the script itself. We can do that in several different ways. So we can use that as a decimal number. So we can literally type the number in decimal format straight into the script. We can also use scientific notation as well, if you're familiar with scientific notation. Now, it's worth noting that the E in the scientific notation can be uppercase or lowercase, and it'll be parsed exactly the same. You can also use hexadecimal. So that's the base 16 numbers that are often used, for instance, in colour systems as a fine example of that. So now we know what a number is, what kind of format it follows, and also how we can write it in our scripts. Well, the next question is, well, what's the biggest number that you can deal with? What kind of number can Lua handle? Well, the answer to that is in the representation of the data type again. So just going back to it, Lua's number is a double point floating precision number, and that means that it's a 64-bit of data. So when we look at that, that means that we can have 2 to the power 64 possible outcomes in that bit of data. Now, that really means that we can have a number that is up to 9 quintillion and something else. So it's absolutely huge, the number that you can have within Lua. So for most applications, you need not worry about whether your number is going to be too big for Lua to handle. But if you are going to go over a number like that, then it's probably worth looking at the data type that you're going to be using. Maybe there's something a little bit more specialist that you need to be worried about. The only final thing to look at is the sign. So in some programming languages you can have signed and unsigned, and in Lua there is no unsigned number. So therefore you can define both negative and positive numbers in the number data type, whether it be float or integer. If you're into financial market trading at all and you want to apply your Lua skills to an algorithmic trading platform, then feel free to go to script.trading and subscribe for more information on that. Don't forget, LuaScript is also the IDE that underpins that, the web-based Lua editor that will assist with all of these data type issues as you write your code. We're really excited about releasing that to you. It's going to be coming in a few weeks' time. If you want more information on that, contact us on LuaScript.dev or subscribe to more videos, and we'll see you soon.